Hello and welcome to another segment of the East Brunswick Advisory Health Council's Wellness Spotlight. My special guest today is Dr. Ted Koren. Dr. Koren is the most widely read doctor of chiropractic in the world today, with over 50 million of his popular, scientifically referenced patient education brochures in distribution. Born and raised in Brooklyn, he attended the University of Miami and earned his bachelor's degree in mass communication. Upon his graduation, Dr. Koren received his Doctor of Chiropractic degree from Sherman College of Chiropractic, graduating valedictorian of his class. He is a co-founder of the Pennsylvania College of Chiropractic, where Dr. Koren has also taught, and is a highly sought-after speaker worldwide on natural health and wellness trends. In addition to his extensive writing and publishing, Dr. Koren is the developer of a technique of chiropractic analysis and adjusting that bears his name. He lives and practices chiropractic in Pennsylvania and is married with 2 children. Dr. Ted Koren, welcome to the Wellness Spotlight.
Thank you, Dr. Friedman.
Ted, tell me, you graduated Miami University with a degree in mass communications. How did that lead to you going to chiropractic school?
That's a good question. I asked myself that sometime. I actually was pre-med for many years and decided I didn't want to be an MD, as my younger brothers wound up becoming MDs. They were following in my footsteps. Then I changed my footsteps at the last minute. And I liked the, it wasn't really mass communication so much as communicating, period. And I enjoyed it very much. And I later found that I was really attracted to science. And I started writing articles, and the science of healing just called to me. I later went to chiropractic school.
Now, being a publisher, the most widely read publisher in the world on wellness-based information, what was it that led you to start writing and publishing?
I felt that the public wasn't getting the information they needed, and that they were, and doctors didn't have the materials that they needed. So in a sense, I have 2 audiences: the doctor who purchases the material and the patients who they distribute it to. And it was just a matter of, hey, how come people aren't learning about this stuff? This is incredible stuff here. Let's let people know about it.
Now, I remember you telling a story years ago, Ted, about being involved in a debate very early on, right after you had graduated.
One of my patients, I just started practicing, and a patient comes into the office and says, you know, I'm being transferred, I have to leave. So I thought, great, there goes a quarter of my practice. You know. But he said, I like you though, Dr. Koren, and I'd like to give you this book. If you're not a member of my organization, it's $500. It's a little thing, you know, not little book, not that big, not that one, but it was pretty small. And I said, thank you. What's it about? He says, I think you need it. It'll help you get into communicating more. So I took a look through it, and it was a list of all the radio and TV stations and newspapers, the producers on this, all this stuff in the Delaware Valley. And I didn't know that you needed a publicist and spend a lot of money to get on the air, because I was dumb. I was just out of school, you know. And so I started calling people, and I started getting on the air. And I wound up getting on every radio and TV station in the Delaware Valley, a market of over 3 million people. I got shot down a lot. I got rejected a lot of times that I tried, you know, but I was single then, and I was used to getting rejected a lot. But later on, I figured out exactly what to say and how to say it, and I began to get on the air. And one of the first shows, it was really something, they said, we can't have a chiropractor on unless an MD is on with you. I said, that's ridiculous. You have MDs on all the time. Why don't you have a rule that can't have an MD on unless there's a chiropractor on with them, or a natural healer, you know, balance it out. But somehow they didn't feel that that was unbalanced. So they said, no, you can't get on the air unless we can get an MD to debate you. I said, try, you'll never get an MD. I've been on the air many times earlier days, and they just don't really do it. But they called up and said, we found somebody. This guy was chief of rentgenology at Thomas Jefferson Hospital. He had been debating chiropractors for 30 years. He was instrumental in getting chiropractic rejected from Medicare. He's visited chiropractic colleges. I was out of school 4 months. I go, oh my God, did I step in at this time? Then they said, Dr. Koren, are you on the phone? Are you still there? Yeah, I'm there. I'll debate him. Don't worry about it. I hung up the phone. And then I changed my underwear, of course. And then I had to figure out what in the world did I do. So the first rule in warfare is, remember what that is? Know your enemy. So my brothers are MDs. How did I win debates with them? We'd grow up, I'd give them noogies. That wouldn't work on the radio. You know, they couldn't see it. And I didn't think Dr. Edikan would be into that. So I figured I better start studying.
Couldn't give him noogies here.
Couldn't give him noogies. Well, I could, but it's a radio. No one would see it.
So
TV, I could give you a noogie. I'll see. It'll work.
So you
I'm from Brooklyn. So I got on the air. Well, actually, weeks went by, and I just started cramming. Because you try to see things from everyone's perspective. And by the time the radio show, it was about a month later, I had a stack of research. I was blown away by what I found. I just went to medical schools, osteopathic schools, all the libraries, and just spent hours and hours, you know, sort of honing the material, getting it together. So I get on the radio, and they were supposed to have us on for an hour. 3 hours later, we're still slocking it out. And that's sort of how I started in publishing, because I walked out of the debate. And by the way, it was great. And the people on the radio called me the next day and apologized and said, "We're really sorry we had this guy on with you. Would you like to come back and have the show for yourself?" So it worked out really well. And I was on numerous times. But I had a stack of material, dynamite stuff. Much of it we weren't even taught in chiropractic school. God forbid they should ever teach this stuff in medical school. And I said, what can I do with this? And it just struck me I should write patient literature. And that was the basis of creating what turned out to be a series of brochures, chiropractic literature that I guess over 50, 60 million have been distributed so far. So that was just the beginning. And so, yeah, that little debate got me started. There was, he said something interesting. He said, Dr. Koren, isn't it true that chiropractors, it's 4 years of chiropractic school after college? I said, yeah. He says, you know, us MDs, we go to college, then we have 4 years medical school, then we do internship, residency, specialty. The implication being that they were much better than us because they didn't go to school, you know, they went to school so much longer. So I said, so what? You know, it takes 4 years to be a rabbi, 8 years to be a Catholic priest, 20 years to become a Buddhist monk. Does the length of time mean one is superior than the other? I said to him, you're going to school a long time, but you're learning the wrong things. A chiropractor in 1 month sees more miracles than you'll see in 20 years. He didn't like that. But then the fun started when they opened up the call-ins, you know, opened up the phone lines. And everything lit up. People love a debate. See, I found out, I used to be a DJ in college, and I found out that DJs are essentially lazy. I know, I was. So when you had guests on, and you wanted a debate, they'll scream at each other, you'll sit back, you don't have to do any work, and you watch the ratings go up. And the phones all lit up, and people called call after call after call, and they're all saying, I went to this chiropractor, my MD couldn't help me, and I feel great, and my wife is going, she doesn't have her menstrual cramps, no more headaches, my kid's allergies cleared up, the asthma, call after call after call. It was great, you know. And these were not people I told to call. These are just people listening. And what did my opponent do sitting there?
What did he do?
Nothing. He had to sit there and take it. Because I found out what's medicine's weak spot. Patients who are satisfied with chiropractic. If medicine worked, they wouldn't go to chiropractors. They want to, you know, those days they were fighting to get rid of chiropractic. I used to tell the MDs, if you really want to get rid of us, get people better. They'll never come to us. But people loved the drug-free, natural, safe approach. That they didn't have to get a prescription. They didn't have to get injected. They didn't have to fill their kids up with all these chemicals. Today it's horrible, the amount of drugs that kids are being given.
Ted, we shared the platform not too long ago at a national symposium in Florida.
Yeah,
and
that was fun.
Your presentation was, as usual, terrific, extremely well received. And you talked for a while about the distinction between expressive and suppressive health care.
Yes.
Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. And that is nothing new. This has been going on for thousands of years. It's traditionally called the hygienic school of healing. And there are essentially two ways of looking at symptoms. One is symptoms are bad, and we got to get rid of them. You have a fever, we got to lower it. You have an infection, give an antibiotic. You have a rash, here's a cream, a steroid, a corticosteroid. Whatever. You have diarrhea, here's something for that. You have high blood pressure, we'll force it down. It's essentially saying symptoms are bad. And we have to suppress the symptoms. The other school of thought, the expressive school, traditionally known as the empirical school of healthcare, which many healthcare systems belong to, said no, symptoms are how the body fights disease. Hippocrates said it beautifully. He said symptoms are how the body works. We call them diseases, but in fact they're the cure of diseases. A fever is how you burn off an infection. We find now that kids that are given suppressive care for like ear infection, for example, ear infections such as antibiotics have more ear infections. We find that when people, you force fever down, a great example came out of the journal Pharmacology a few years ago. Taking aspirin or Tylenol for the flu keeps you sicker 3.5 days longer on average. Why? Because your body is trying to burn off the infection, sweat it out, cleanse, and you're preventing it by giving it drugs. So it takes your body longer to heal. And we see this over and over again. We find that suppressive care has a very bad side effect. It turns acute illness. Acute is dramatic. Throwing up, vomiting, fever, diarrhea, a rash, the general malaise. I feel terrible. I have to lay down, a cold, flu. These are acute illnesses. There are many, of course. They're temporary. They're dramatic, they're strong, and they're temporary. So they go away. If you suppress an acute illness with drugs and various chemicals, you drive it deeper. So the symptoms may seem to go away, but instead you create chronic illness on a deeper level. It spreads through the whole body. It's permanent. I'll give an example. Children that are given that have eczema. Babies have eczema. The medical therapy is, remember, you don't do drugs, of course. Good, I'm proud of you. The medical therapy is steroid creams, corticosteroids. Smear it on, and the eczema goes away. Research shows that 4 or 5 years later, these kids get asthma and emphysema and bronchitis. And not emphysema, asthma and bronchitis. And you might say, what's the connection? Well, somebody who studies regular medicine wouldn't see it, and MDs admit they have no idea. But anyone who studies empirical healthcare, homeopaths, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, they say, well, it's obvious. The skin is an organ of respiration. It breathes. The lungs are organs of respiration. Bronchi are organs of respiration. If you suppress a disease on an external organ of respiration, the skin, it drives it deeper, and it drives it into the internal organs of respiration, the lungs and bronchi, and it's harder to get rid of a suppressed illness. So whereas eczema, especially using, say, something like homeopathy, chiropractic, will resolve, asthma, you can have it for years. People are dying from asthma now. 5,000 people a year die from asthma. It never was that bad before. But there's so much suppressive care. The symptoms are being suppressed. People are literally getting sicker and sicker. The more drugs they take, the sicker they get. Oh, go ahead. I keep going on about this.
No, this is great. Eczema, allergies would be another one. Asthma.
Allergies and asthma. It's very interesting. I take care of the Amish, in Lancaster County. Excuse me. And they generally don't vaccinate. They have no autism. Not only they have no autism, they have no allergies, and they have no asthma. Study after study shows that vaccinations that drive disease deep in the body, you're injecting a virus or a bacteria and chemicals deep into the body, bypassing the skin and the mucous membranes. In a sense, vaccination does what the immune system is trying to prevent, having microorganisms go deep into the body.
This is a very sensitive issue for a lot of people, especially now where...
it shakes them up because they believe that vaccines are good, and there's no proof to that at all. My book, of course, just highlights the research that has been going on for decades, that communities that don't vaccinate, and there are quite a few, or families that don't vaccinate, overwhelmingly have healthier children. Overwhelmingly. There is no proof vaccinated children are healthier. And I've studied the literature, I've gone through the medical journals for decades. Non-vaccinated children are healthier than vaccinated children. The vaccination is suppressive. It drives disease deep, and they can't get rid of it. They're always sick on some level.
People in the media today especially are hearing about the importance of going in for swine flu vaccine, for flu vaccine, and words like epidemic are being used. Pandemic are being used. Who is a person to believe?
It's best to believe science and not hysteria. So, 1976, President Ford gets on the air. We're going to have a swine flu epidemic. It's going to be like 1918, 1919. Millions can die. I want every American to get a swine flu shot. One person died, they say, from swine flu in 1976. 25 died from the vaccine. Hundreds more were paralyzed with Guillain-Barré syndrome. God knows how many more were affected, because they don't keep good statistics on vaccine damage. What happened this year? Horrible swine flu epidemic? Millions are going to die? It just came out in the research that it's now being downgraded. They said 60,000 people would die in England. Then they lowered it to maybe 1,000. I think 200 have died. Less than regular flu.
What about other diseases, Ted? You know, we heard about the polio epidemic years ago and how important the vaccine was. And if you say you got to believe science, well, the people who make the vaccines say there's lots of science behind the vaccines, that they're being improved year after year. Oh, how do you answer that?
Did you ever remember when they used to advertise cigarettes? Big deal with the Surgeon General. Cigarette companies had lots of scientists, and they paid for lots of research showing cigarettes were perfectly safe. They didn't cause cancer or heart disease. You get the science you pay for. Pharmaceuticals come out with lots of good science, but they're from the pharmaceutical companies. They pay science. Actually, it's a good story. So I'm in chiropractic school, and my roommate has a friend come over. And his friend turned out worked for the cigarette companies as a scientist. This is in the 70s. And I said, what are you doing? What kind of research are you doing? He says, well, I'm proving that there's no relationship between cigarette smoking and cancer and heart disease. I said, I'm shocked. I said, you can prove that? And he looked at me in a condescending way, as if I were a lower life form. Being a student, I was, of course. And he said, Ted, give me the money. Tell me what you want. I'll set up the experiment to prove anything you want. So yeah, there's lots of science. Do you know that one scientist said, I have a stack of papers a foot high showing hormone replacement therapy is wonderful. Thousands and thousands of papers are written on the benefits of hormone replacement therapy. It was pulled from the market because it caused heart disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's. What happened? They finally did good research. Yeah, there's science, but there's science and there's science. Is the science paid for by people who have a vested interest in a certain outcome? Or is it truly objective science? When you look at objective scientists, you see a different story.
So then, Ted, if you'd allow me to play devil's advocate, how would you answer your critics that are saying that the research articles that you're quoting that talk about the benefits of chiropractic care, that research isn't tainted to be able to suit your own ends?
I guess they could say that. The answer is, well, good research, outcome studies. See, years ago, you didn't mention this in my intro, but I fought the federal government on the very issue of this. The Federal Trade Commission said, well, you're writing about the benefits of chiropractic for menstrual problems, for asthma, for allergies, children, for all kinds of health problems, overall wellness, feeling better, more energy. Let me see the controlled clinical studies. We said, chiropractors don't have those kind of studies. They said, well, that's what we're accepting as good science. But the fact is, controlled clinical studies or randomized controlled studies were only developed to test pharmaceuticals, to see if one drug was better or worse than another drug. Has no relationship to chiropractic, homeopathy, naturopathy, other forms of healthcare. We have different standards. What standards do we have? It's called outcome studies. where you work on people and you see how they turn out. That's the research that's truly valid to judge chiropractic. You can't compare apples and oranges. You can't judge chiropractic by a medical standard. It would be silly to say chiropractic has to follow a medical model. Our true success are the millions of patients that have regained their health and maintained their health under our care. That is really what the bottom line is. Are people healthier under chiropractic care? Or whatever care you're going to test them. And they are, without drugs, without surgery, naturally, and without pumping them full of chemicals that ultimately damage their immune system.
Ted, you've been talking a lot about how chiropractic care can help a lot of problems that most people don't realize chiropractic care may help, like allergies, asthma, other things like that. Most people think the chiropractic care is for treating musculoskeletal problems, neck pain, back pain, joint aches, things like that. And people have had great results coming to chiropractors with those types of problems, but most people don't know about how chiropractic care can help organ and glandular problems too. But you seem very passionate about that. Would you mind talking a little bit about that?
I started collecting the material that was in the journals, and I was shocked at how much great research there was, how many studies, how many articles were written. So I put together this little book that's in the local library here, and it's called Chiropractic and Spinal Research. Should I hold it up? And in the article, in the book, excuse me, this is a picture of D.D. Palmer. He discovered chiropractic. And he really gave birth to an incredible discovery. So I put together, and I'll just look at the table of contents. And we have others on children and women's wellness, neurological problems, the various conditions that people have responded to under chiropractic care. Not that we treat disease, but we permit the body to function better. We let the nerves flow function without stress. And without a deep stress that most people aren't even aware they have, the body works better, and its natural healing ability can function. And it's like saying, when you ask, well, what is chiropractic for? What diseases? You might as well ask, what is good nutrition for? What disease? Well, no matter what disease you have, you need good nutrition. It could make the difference between getting better and staying sick, or getting worse, or dying.
And most people, even though they realize that you've got to exercise and eat right and things like that, you can't really get proper exercise or get good nutrition unless your body's working at its best.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. If you're not balanced, if your nerves are stressed out, if your brain is not sending messages to the body, you won't be healthy. So here's some of the articles. I could just, colic, colitis, constipation, Crohn's, deafness, developmental delay, disc herniation. Well, it's musculoskeletal, but a lot of people have it. Disc herniation, sciatica, low back problems. Fevers, give an adjustment. Sometimes kids, the fevers don't seem to work right. They're going up, they're going down, they don't have a really good fever and then a resolution. And chiropractic care should be given to kids if they just don't seem to be responding.
How come more people don't adopt a more healthy lifestyle? Why do they resort to drugs and therapies to treat conditions instead of doing more things proactively to be able to help themselves stay healthier?
That's a mystery. Why do some people look at a family? One family member, it could be a dysfunctional family. My wife is a psychologist. We've talked about this. Horribly dysfunctional family, right? Abuse, alcoholism, all kinds of bad things. One of them says, no, I'm going to get better. Gets therapy, reads, works on themselves, gets associates with people, and winds up healing, becoming successful, having a healthy marriage and children, and and all this. Another member of the family might deteriorate, might go into lifelong depression, live on drugs. Why does one person decide, I'm going to heal, I'm going to be better, and another person not? I don't know.
Well, maybe it's because they don't have the right information to be able to make better decisions about what they could do. So by being able to produce work like this and having it here on hand in the library in the Just for the Health of It section, it's going to enable people to be able to learn more about what they could do to make better decisions. We're coming at a time now where we're taping towards the end of 2009. People are starting to make resolutions on what they're going to do next year to be able to take better care of themselves. Ted, what do you suggest people do? Where should they start?
Nutrition is so poorly understood these days. I like the Weston A. Price Foundation, WESTONAPRICE, the Weston A. Price Foundation.org if you want. The PPNF, Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation, ppnf.org. I'm reminding myself of all these websites. Really good information because the quality of food has gone downhill tremendously. Most people are not aware of research showing that soy milk is actually bad for your thyroid, that soy depresses the thyroid, that chlorine and fluoride in the water supply also depress the thyroid. So you have 50 million Americans with thyroid trouble, not realizing that a lot of the stuff they thought was good for them is actually causing damage. So for God's sake, put a filter in your water system. Get the chlorine and fluoride out when it comes. Avoid soy, except fermented soy like soy sauce and all that. Soy milk is considered, they thought it was a health food, but they thought margarine was a health food when it came out. And now we know margarine eaters have twice the heart attacks that butter eaters have. So you have to start questioning. And you have to be careful that you're not reading stuff from a person who works for the pharmaceutical company, and then he says, oh, drugs are great. Well, yeah. I mean, there was one study, it was really interesting. They looked at Lipitor and other cholesterol-lowering drugs. They said 99% of the people taking cholesterol-lowering drugs don't have any musculoskeletal problems. That was a study done by the pharmaceutical companies. Independent studies found that 90% of everyone taking these drugs have musculoskeletal problems. Their back and neck and head and legs and all kinds of problems, pains from cholesterol-lowering drugs.
Thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you sharing your insights and for your work.
Thank you.
This concludes another segment of the East Brunswick Advisory Health Council's Wellness Spotlight. I'm Dr. Ken Friedman, president of the East Brunswick Advisory Health Council, reminding you that wellness works when you work it.